Hey everybody, we're back. This video is about cost per watt, and I talk about this analysis as one of the important criteria in choosing a company to work with, a brand to buy, a model to buy of laser. And this is definitely a video I've been thinking about all week as a practitioner asked me if I could make one. And I get excited, thinking about making this video because what I'm about to reveal is shocking, and it's also kind of amusing when you actually look at the numbers here. So I'm going to hone right in on it, cost per watt. So this is one of those actually easy things that you can do at home if you have a calculator or you're good at math. And essentially you're just going to take the specification that is for the power, which would either be in milliwatts or watts. Generally, most class 3s will put a milliwatt amount, generally. A class 4 is usually just go by watt, okay? Versus, it requires less zeros. So there's 1,000 milliwatts in 1 watt, just so you know, okay? So if it's like 30 watts, they don't bother putting 30,000 milliwatts, it's just 30 watts. People kind of know that, okay? But the way that you're going to actually calculate cost per watt is you take the total price that you're going to pay, retail cost, and you divide that into the amount of milliwatts. And the reason I say milliwatts is because that'll allow you actually to do an analysis across any class. Okay, so even class 1 and class 2 devices use milliwatts generally. They're very low level. So when you arrive at that cost per milliwatt, then you can really see who's, you can levels the playing field, basically apples to apples, as I say. So let's focus in right here for a second. Okay, so my rule of thumb, by the way, for a class 4 device, for what I think is if the company is doing honest pricing, for what the value is closer to being worth. And I say that in general you should look for companies with the class 4 or higher power that adhere to $1,000 per watt of power. Okay, so you want to pay somewhere around 1,000 per watt. If it's a little bit over that, not a big deal. If it's under that, hey, great. As long as it's not way under that, and then we have to start to ask questions. Is this a really cheap device or not? Okay. All right, so Diawave, very well-known company in class 4. Excellent laser. Okay. On average, and I give a range here in my document that I've shared with everybody, the range of all their models, so $834 to $1,300 per watt. Doesn't matter, so that's the full. There's obviously within there's multiple brands, models, but that's the general range, okay, for all of them. And they go anywhere from 10 watts to 60 watts, okay? And so that's good, very competitive, and very good component quality. Okay, sure. K-Laser. And I shared in some information elsewhere on my site who the manufacturer was. Also manufacturing, the same laser as manufactured as a dental laser, that type of thing. Now let's look at the cost per watt. Okay, 3,600 again for their lowest, model series, up to 4,999 cost per watt. Okay, so pretty big difference there, right? Yeah, and then it's not so much that we just look at then the cost per watt. We say now, wow, that's significantly more. Why is it more? That's when we actually go and we kind of look, well, are they justifying the price somewhere? Is it better component quality? Is it more power density? What is it? Okay. So, for example, we might look in here and we'll say, hey, look, there's a 50% duty cycle in here. Okay. That's just one of the specs. This is just one of the specs that we look at. Okay. That duty cycle is very important, by the way, to always get that with lasers. And the 50% duty cycle basically means that this laser is going to spend half of its time turned off, actually. It flashes, it's actually flashing, it's pulsing. So whatever that power setting, excuse me, power setting is that they're saying, so let's say they say, well, here's 10 watt laser, okay, but it's got a 50% duty cycle. So basically what you do is you take 50% of 10 watts. So now you're left with what? 5 watts, okay? That's not too hard to grasp. Yeah, if it's a 15 watt laser, half that is 7.5 watts. So that's just one spec we're looking at that majorly diminishes the power, the actual output. You have to look at duty cycle. So you're not buying a 15 watt laser, you're not buying a 10 watt laser. And this goes for other brands as well, once you actually see their duty cycle. Some have 50%, usually at the lowest, 75%, and then 100% means that the laser is on all the time. It's true continuous wave. So now we're saying, $3,600 to $4,999 per watt, and it is on a 50% duty cycle. wow, I mean, this is starting to not add up. It's not, the value doesn't, I can't even see there. And that's just one spec we looked at. I do a further breakdown of that in some documents and with that brand. You can always call me up about it. But that's just one of the aspects. And it goes on a little further from there, diminishing the power output more and more and more. Dual wavelength is another issue with that one. Anyways, moving on here. Okay, Multi-Radiance Medical, one of the masters of marketing in the industry. Okay, so they're near the top when it comes to marketing ability. In terms of quality, they're kind of in the other direction, to put it politely. Okay, so what is their cost per watt on some of their models here? It's just so funny. It's so funny how overpriced it is. Okay, so it's 33,333. It was one of those fun repeating decimal points. Up to 266,666. So we have 3 6s there. Not a good thing. No, I'm just kidding. But point is, that's a huge increase. Okay, and generally they're putting out infrared, red. So we're going to say, wow, that's significantly more. Well, certainly they must justify that insane price. Okay, so then we zoom in here just for a second. We're not even going to analyze. I'm not going to spend all that time. Okay, it's not what this video is about. But, you know, the first thing we look at there is, well, it's not a laser, it's an LED. Okay, so actually, technically, I shouldn't even be comparing Multi-Radiance Medical and their lines, their Teraquant solars, their MR4 actives. I shouldn't really be comparing it to a K laser. It's not really technically fair, okay, because here we have an LED, and an LED is not a laser, which is an acronym. Okay, an acronym for emitting radiation that's in a coherent beam of light, okay, which is what those 3,000 studies, published studies, are about. It's about using a real laser, okay. An LED is already putting incoherent light out. I'm not saying LEDs are useless, but I'm just saying it's not a laser, okay. So maybe I shouldn't do a comparison. But so the LED is already incoherent. By the time it hits the skin is then already dispersing the beam. It goes a little bit deeper. It's dispersing it even more. In general, that's why you don't really find much penetration power with those. And they're really good for more superficial types of conditions. Anyway, so that's a huge cost per watt. Okay. I actually honed in right here in my document on one of their newest models, the MR4 Active, which sounds really impressive. And they do an amazing job at those conferences and expos you can go to. All right, so the MR4 Active is actually, they came down in price a little bit there. Not bad. 11,000 to 13,000 per watt. But hold on a second. All their lasers are super pulsing. Okay, so again, I can't really, I didn't give you actually the average output power. And actually, oh, that's actually a mistake I made. Okay, so whenever you're dealing with a super pulsing or pulsing device, you always have to calculate what's called the average output power. I've only seen one pulsing laser company, maybe two, I think there's just one, that actually gives you that term. Why do you need average output power? Okay, that calculation is how you then compare it to a continuous wave device. Okay, so you want that apples to apples comparison, right? When you make that calculation, then you usually find that, oh wow, the actual average output power compared to a continuous wave is actually very low. So any of the devices are usually go 15 milliwatts to 60 milliwatts max, and then they're charging you, you know, okay, I think that's what that price was there. Okay, so they're charging 11 to 13,000, probably closer to that. It depends on the deal they give you for that model. But the actual average output power of that laser, when you actually look at it, is very low level. It's around like 50 to 60 milliwatts when you do the average output power. And you'll have to grill that company for them to disclose that, by the way. Or you can calculate it yourself, and I show you how to do that formulation, that calculation. All right, I'm getting a little tangented here. I got to focus. All right, Microlight Corp, ML830, 38,388 to $50,000 per watt. Okay, remember I said adhere to 1,000 per watts. That's what the good lasers adhere to. Okay, Laser X 3000, 7,666 cost per watt. Not as bad as some of the others. Definitely, we can respect them more from that standpoint. Still very high. Light Cure, they do the Light Force models. Been around a little while. Getting a little bit more in the reasonable zone here, $1,900 to $2,777 cost per watt. And by the way, most of these lasers are putting out infrared. Okay, just so you know, mostly infrared wavelength. Okay, the Q laser, which recently the FDA, told the Dr. Larry Little to actually step down, and he got racked up with a lot of charges, might go to jail. Anyway, that's the latest with that company, because they made a lot of claims that their device was not FDA cleared for, which is a no-no. Okay. Anyways, Q laser, they make the Q1000, the Q1000NG, been around a long time, old device, and old technology. $22,865 to $151,785, okay, per watt. The AMD pilot laser, also been around 25 years actually. That's like the Toyota Camry. They keep on improving it year after year. They've been improving it forever. So at this point, it's a pretty good laser. They've been improving for long, and I respect a company that's kind of continued to improve their one device instead of having multiple models. Hence Toyota. It's a really good analogy. $466 per watt. What else? Cutting edge lasers. One of my favorite lasers to critique, if you ever are considering one of those. They build those big robotic arms, by the way. The big robotic, I mean, they look really nice. They look beautiful. And they move the laser, and they move the LED, not a laser. They move the LED automatically for you. It's hands-free, which is supposed to have more therapeutic efficacy when it's actually the opposite. Cutting-edge lasers are on the high end for a class 4 device, unlike some of the highest ends of price. $15,000 to $20,000 cost per watt. And those are actually very low wattage lasers, and they are LEDs. I keep using the word laser. It's a light therapy. Within light therapy, that larger category, the term laser falls within that. LEDs fall within light therapy. Okay, so even I get confused. I would say laser, but it's not really a laser. Okay. All right, so Erconia. Erconia is a classic. If you haven't heard of it, then you probably haven't, Googled for 15 minutes, okay? Because that's how much of a brand recognition they have, because they were one of the first lasers to come out a long time ago, 25, 30 years ago. This one's my favorite. It is $750,000 to $1 million per watt. I'm not making that up. $750,000 to $1 million per watt. Right. So some folks still call me up and say, "Hey, what else do you think about it?" I mean, that should be telling enough. Okay. I wouldn't have any issue, by the way, with some of these lasers as much with some of them if they price them accordingly. So if Erconia, came out and said, "Yeah, it's a great laser and it's $100, $150." I'd say, hey, that's great. Definitely have it in your tools. Train your assistant on it. Have it there. Have it at your practice. Experiment with it at home. This is great. Everybody's happy. But it's a very expensive device, as you saw. And their justification, by the way, for some of these companies, their justification, these companies, is when we put our brand name on it, the value goes up instrumentally. So this would be like an example of, instead of just buying a regular dress shirt or a skirt, whatever it is, okay, piece of clothing, you decided to go with some hot designer, okay? You bought a $5,000 skirt. You bought a $15,000 dress shirt, okay, because it's an exclusive designer. When was the last time you bought a $15,000 piece of clothing? Because it has the brand name or logo on it. Exactly. Now, if you're making multi-millions a year, right, who cares? I think it's still a waste of money, but even still. Okay, so that's a really good analogy. So apparently, when you put your brand on it, and especially as that brand ages, it's just like a good batch of wine or whiskey, I guess. As that brand ages, the value stays the same in this industry. It's mind-blowing. Value stays the same even though there's better technology, there's better devices out there. good analogy for that also is like some of the first computers maybe, or maybe some of those first Pentiums. Let's say just a good desktop computer or laptop back in 1990. Would you pay the same for that computer today? Same computer for your practice or home use. And if it had a brand name on it, let's just multiply that times 5. Would you pay 5 times that price back then, today? No, this is crazy. This is ludicrous. That's exactly the industry for a lot of these companies. And that's what they believe that they deserve to the value they warrant. I think it's craziness. But, all right, I'm scrolling down here. For this document, yeah, I don't have the full suite breakdown of every single device, which I'm sure you're very curious about. But if you ever have any questions and you have trouble calculating that pretty simple calculation yourself, then just give me a call, or probably the fastest way is just type the brand name into an email, shoot it off to the site, and I'll give you what you need to know. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.